Hi, I'm April Little,
And I'm Anna Dowahair.
and this is the Reclaiming the Garden podcast. Today we have a awesome interview with our friend Lauren Dempster, but first I did want to go into the story that I just totally forgot to share in our last episode on purity culture. It was shortly after we really recorded it. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even say this when talking about my experiences.
Oh my gosh, it's there's so many of these purity culture stories too. I feel like we'll keep remembering them for years and years to come.
But I did just want to specifically just because it is so bad, this one in particular, that I wanted to share. So I remember, this youth pastor, he's talking about summer camp and what you need to bring, and he's talking about the rules and stuff. And so he's like, ladies, you cannot wear yoga pants or leggings, or leggings as pants. You can wear leggings if they're covered by something else. And he was like, because when you wear them, you can see everything. And that's so gross. Why are you looking down there? That means you're looking down there.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like conservative pastors and evangelical pastors like that have just a gift of taking things that are seemingly very normal and making them creepy. That's a you thing. That's a you problem. If you're the one looking at girls' bottom region. Yeah.
I think he's mostly referring, to the vagina.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. It's just no, what the fuck? And somehow it's we in evangelicalism, you're supposed to just take that as normal, and it's oh yeah, so that way if you can see everything, that means that you have to not to do that to not make your brothers in Christ stumble. And it's no, there needs to be a change in behavior on their end.
Yeah, and it's also you're expected to almost be thankful, oh, thank you for pointing that out. I promise I'll never do this thing again. It's stupid. I remember with mine, it was bra straps. They were if your bra strap shows, you might cause your brother to stumble. And it's okay, do you want me to not wear a bra then? Because I can very easily do that too.
But then your nipples will show. So
you know what? That's Eve's fault, man. Eve ate the apple, and now girls have boobs.
Is that what they fucking say?
I don't know. I know that a lot of things that women or AFAB people go through is blamed on the fall, and specifically blamed on Eve. But we've talked about this in the Genesis episode. Adam ate the apple too, and it was probably a pomegranate, but doesn't matter. I feel there's always There's always a scapegoat, and it's stupid.
Yeah. So getting into our episode for this week,
yes,
like we said, we're going to be having a conversation with Lauren Dempster. And it was such a lovely conversation because they have so many cool things to share about their journey and story, and she was just able to share a lot, particularly also speaking to the experience of leaving a church that she really loved and that she really put all of her energy into. And it was just such a heartbreaking thing to realize that they no longer belonged there anymore, and they couldn't thrive there anymore.
Yeah, it was incredible to hear. And they are just such a strong human. I feel so honored to know them and call them a friend. So very, very excited for y'all to hear this interview.
Yeah, well, let's get into it.
Let's get to it.
So today we are excited to have our friend Lauren Dempster on the show. Lauren, she, they, is a Hamilton-obsessed coffee lover, advocate, your friendly neighborhood non-binary bisexual, and dog mom. Lauren is a passionate advocate for various social justice issues and is also passionate about raising awareness for rare diseases and ending the stigma surrounding mental illnesses. They use their social media as a platform for awareness and advocacy, sharing parts of their story and leaving space for others to share their own. When not in the dance studio with their dog or curled up with a good book, Lauren enjoys quality time, which usually involves coffee with friends. Their ultimate goal is to become a licensed mental health counselor, for teenagers and to continue to raise awareness and educate people on various topics on their social media while showing others that you can, in fact, be queer and a Christian. So welcome to the show, Lauren. We are so excited to have you.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I feel like I'm really important right now. Like I'm on a podcast, and I feel like only important people go on podcasts. So like I'm really living my best life. I'm just like, wow, I'm so important. I'm on a podcast.
Well, we are so excited to have you on.
Yeah, and I'm so excited that I've gotten to like meet you and befriend you and everything. I guess we should give a quick shout out to the Voyage meetup.
Yes.
Where we met. It's an LGBTQ Christian meetup that originally before COVID was meeting in San Diego in person. And then when COVID happened and lockdown happened, it started to be like virtual on Zoom. And, I think Lauren and I were one of the first like non-San Diego people to join.
Yeah. Everyone else is like, I'm in California, and April and I are like, hello, we're from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Also, I'm glad it was differentiated that Lauren, you were also from the Voyage retreat, because sometimes there's so much overlap between that and QCF. And like, I know I met you at a queer Christian something, right. But I just can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, so I guess to get started in our conversation, the question that we ask all our guests, tell us about your faith background and journey. And I know that is a long and winding one, so, take us down whatever roads you want.
Okay, yes, April has heard bits and pieces of this thanks to the Voyage. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My home was actually the furthest thing from any religion. My parents are very much like, it's whatever. My dad just thought it was a bunch of BS. I did, when I was really little, I went to church with my grandparents. I went to bright and early 7 a.m. mass at the age of 7. But it was okay. I don't remember like learning a whole lot, but like I got to spend the weekend with my grandparents, dress up, and I got donuts afterwards. So like 7 a.m. mass was worth it, mostly because of the donuts.
Amen.
And Amen. Yeah. And so I had that, but I didn't know a whole lot. I knew there was this dude, Jesus, obviously knew he died on a cross because it's right there in the Catholic Church. And that was basically all I had. I was like, okay, there's God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, whatever that is, and then some chick named Mary. Like I literally knew nothing. And so by the time I was probably in third grade, which in my brain is middle school because my town set things up weird back then. So 3rd through 6th was middle school, and then we had K through 2nd as elementary, and then we have a junior senior high school, so it was 9th through 12th. So I was at that school for 6 years. Yeah,
got it.
My town's a little special. They finally caught on with everybody else though, so now they're normal. And so that's 3rd grade is like when I really stopped like going at all. I got busy with activities, busy with friends, more frequent sleepovers, all that jazz. So I didn't necessarily go as often. And then from then on, it just wasn't a thing in my life. By the time I was a sophomore in high school, I was an atheist. I wouldn't have like labeled myself as that, but like that's 100% what I was. I was like, there's no way God is real. Just with everything I had going on at the time, with all of my mental illnesses and the things that were just like happening in my home life being really sucky, I was like, I don't know anything about this God, but he ain't real. And then I did a total 180 that nobody saw coming. One of my friends, my senior year of high school, had extra tickets to go to a Barlow Girl and Super Chick concert. And they were like playing in town at our town hall. Nothing ever happens in my town. Nothing ever happens in my town. And there was going to be a random concert. And so she invited me and one of our other friends from school, because 2 girls in her youth group could no longer go, which one of those girls is actually now my best friend. And so she invited us to go, and we went, and I didn't know it was like going to be a Jesus thing until I got to her house, and like all of the girls from youth group were there, and I was just standing there, and I was like, what is happening? And so she lived really close to the town hall, so we just walked down there while it was still light. And Boiler Girl and Super Chick are like completely my style of music. They're like, you know, a little alternative-y, like a calmer Jesus version of like old school Paramore. So I was really living my best emo kid life. And you know, they're all female fronted, which made my little feminist heart happy. And so I was like, I really enjoyed it. I didn't know, one of the girls from youth group actually got to go on the stage with Super Chick because she won a contest and got to go like up and like harmonize at one part of one of the songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was super cool. And so then at the end they had an altar call. Did I know it was an altar call? No, I don't know anything. And there was something in me. Boiler Girl ended so at the end of their set was the altar call, and something in me was like, we should go see the people at the front of the stage. And I just like didn't move. I was like, I want to go, but I don't know. And the girls sharing their story during their set just really hit home with me because they were struggling with the same things I was struggling with, or they had. And so it just kind of got me thinking. And I was like, well, maybe this can be a thing. And I clearly was not moving. I was literally, I was already at the front. Like me and some of the girls like pushed our way forward. So they're like 5 feet away from me, still won't move. So I feel like God was just like, okay, you're not moving, so have a human come to you. And so someone came up, one of the volunteers came up to me, asked if he could pray for me. And I was like, sure. And then like, he leaned in and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to tell you something? No idea how this works. I was like, oh, okay. It's like, well, I really struggle with self-harm. And then I was like, why would you say that to a total stranger? And so he prayed over that, and then told me about Jesus. And it was the classic Jesus is at the door of your heart knocking kind of deal. But the thing that really got me was he said Jesus died so you wouldn't have to hurt yourself, and that got my attention so fast. Wow. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but yes, this one. So that night I accepted Jesus. And so I was 16 going on 17. So it's been 10 and a half years that I've had Jesus. I went to a Christian college, a Nazarene college, really tiny one in Quincy, for about five and a half years. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree because my life is a mess. But and so I got really involved with like the Nazarene church while I was there. Before college, I was attending a Baptist church. And then I was super involved in the Nazi church. And then after I graduated from college and I moved back home back in 2018, I started going to my home church more frequently and getting really involved. And that's a non-denominational church. So that's just how New Englanders say they're evangelical without saying they're evangelical.
Yeah, say it.
So, and I was there for like 6 years, was really involved for the last 3 to 4. And it's where I met our friend Brittany, that April knows from The Voyage. And I had a lot of other good friends there. It was my place. It was my home. It was my community. I absolutely loved it at that church. I loved what I did at that church. If you name it, I probably served in it at some point. Like I'm just that person. And so I absolutely loved it. But naturally, when I came out, I just skirted on out because it was a hot mess when I came out. And so now we've kind of opened back up in Massachusetts, but I still haven't gone to like an in-person church because there's not a lot of options up here anyways. So, and so that means there's even fewer options for affirming churches. So for the past several months, I've been going to our friend Bailey's church virtually. So I'm like kind of sort of United Methodist for the moment. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting, long and winding road, and also made more complicated by like sexuality and gender. So I'm curious to know more about like this like coming out process, both like to yourself and then to like more publicly to other people.
Yeah.
So I didn't like actually really sit and think about my sexual identity until end of August 2019, which is when our church was really giving Brittany a hard time for coming out. And I just had a conversation with our mutual friend who just also happened to be one of my leaders in one of my serve areas. And it was just a really hard conversation. Like I left it having feelings. And a part of me was just like, you don't want me to like interact with her on social media, but I can still kind of be her friend. I'm confused. And I was also just like angry because I felt like our friend and the rest of the church that was in the loop was very quick to just like jump to conclusions and throw that this is a sin rhetoric at her. And that had always bothered me since I became a Christian, and anything LGBTQ plus had just been a gray area. I didn't like think twice about it beforehand. And then I became a Christian. And I was like, I feel like you hating them is wrong, but I don't know anything about the Bible. But it still stayed in like a gray area for me. And I just like didn't know what to do with that for a while. And then, you know, the church was treating Brittany really bad. And I was like, I'm not a fan of this. And I remember that day texting my best friend from college. And I was like, I here have a vent novel. You get them all the time, but like I have feelings right now. And I just sent her like this literal book of like what was happening, how the church was handling it, you know, how, you know, my leaders were talking to me about it. Like my leader was really worried, like kind of nervous talking to me because everyone knows I'm on the more liberal side because I ain't quiet about it. And so it was me. And then she also had to talk to our mutual friend who also served with me in various areas. And about the same thing. And she was like, oh, that's not going to be a fun conversation because she's more liberal. And I told her, and she was like, has she met you? Like, also, you're way more vocal. I'm like, yeah, I have no shame. So in that, because I can tell my best friend from college literally anything. We have no boundaries. They're just not needed. Like, and so I gave her like all the background and then was just like, well, this is why I'm angry. Like they don't know what it's like to question their sexuality. Like they just jump to these conclusions and they don't get it. They think it's just a choice or a lifestyle. And this was really like the first time I had said anything like this to someone else. And I was just like, I've been there. And like, I haven't done anything with it, but like, I remember being in that place at like 14, like questioning if I was bisexual. And then I was like, no, that's not a thing. It was really like, no, you wouldn't actually date a girl, so you're good, Lauren. You like boys. And so I kept kind of like pushing it away, but like negative, like people having negative reactions to the LGBTQ plus community always gave me feelings. And now we know why. But so yeah, it was that conversation that I had with my best friend that really started my coming out process. And so she just gave me the language I needed because I wasn't sure what the language I wanted was. Because I was like, well, I feel this way, but like also not. And so she gave me the language I needed. She told me about like the split attraction model. And so at first I identified as biromantic heterosexual. So it was like,
okay,
I would maybe, no, I lied. Oh my gosh, other way around. It was more like I was only like physically attracted to women, but like I only wanted to date men. I was like, no, I don't think that's a thing. And then like my coming out literally happened in the span of 4 months. Like by the end of 2019, I was like, okay, I know who I am as a queer person. And it was an intense 4 months. So I went from being like, no, I wouldn't date a girl, to a little while later being like, yeah, I would date a girl. Like maybe if the Lord brought me a cute Jesus loving girl, I can't say that I'd say no. But like also I totally have a preference for men. And then that slowly shifted to, I am unfortunately attracted to men. They're the worst. I just wish I could be a lesbian. Like, I don't want to be attracted to them anymore, but here I am. And that in itself was just a journey. In the middle of that, I discovered that I'm asexual. And my best friend from college is also ace. She is pan-romantic asexual. And she, as friends do, just send random memes to me, and she would send random ones that are ace related, just to be like, haha, this is my life. And more often than not, I was like, that's a whole mood. And then I was like, I feel like that should be telling me something. I was just texting her and I was like, why do I relate to all these? And she was like, do you need to have another conversation? I was like, yeah, I think I do. So I kind of like, I wrote out all my feelings and sent it to her, did some research. And so I figured out that I'm gray asexual. So like mostly don't experience sexual attraction. But like, you know, you could be one of the lucky ones. Who knows? So it was that. And then, so I had that figured. I was like, great, I'm bi and I'm ace. We're good to go. And then God was like, hey, have an identity crisis with your gender. And I was like, what? Like so much just happened. So then I was exploring with my gender identity, and I found that non-binary really fit me the best. Discovered that I had bits and pieces of dysphoria, like occasional chest dysphoria, hair dysphoria, things like that. And so I figured like that out. I had my best friends start using they them pronouns with me so I could see how they felt. And I just kind of kept going with it and kept exploring. And it was like, yeah, no, this feels better than saying that I'm just a woman. Like I've never really fully like felt like I 100% fit into that gender identity. Because, you know, I'm all like, yay, girl power because feminism. But then I have moments where I like legitimately, I'm like, I don't want to be a girl today. Like I'm good. The end. Like, and also as a 4-year-old, I really wanted to grow up and be a woman doctor, not a doctor for women. Just like I wanted to be a pediatrician, but I also wanted to be a woman when I grew up. But at the same time, I also wanted to be Spider-Man. And I got very upset if you told me I couldn't be Spider-Man. I had to be Spider-Girl because I'm a girl. I was like, listen, I'm going to be Spider-Man. Fight me. And I was not a very intimidating 4-year-old, but that's fine. And I feel like that is like the most non-binary thing in my life. Like, let me grow up and be a woman, but also I'm going to be Spider-Man and I will fight you if you tell me I have to be Spider-Girl. So really the signs have just been there my entire life and I'm just oblivious. And then from there I realized gender fluid fit me more. But specifically, the term that I use is gender fay. And so that's under gender fluid. And it's when your gender, instead of going from like the female to male end of the spectrum and kind of flowing in between, you only really flow between female and androgynous. Like there's no masculine does not exist. And then gender fair is the opposite one. So it's masculine to androgynous. And there's not a masculine anything in my body, not even like an atom. There's just no, it's not a thing. Like the Lord didn't even make me a little mask. So I either identify as a woman or as more androgynous, depending on the day. More often I am very femme presenting, and I identify as a woman more often. But I still have moments where I'm like, I just don't want to be a girl. So I'm not like,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like a girl today. So we're very much in a they them kind of mood, as opposed to she her. And I mean, I'm fine with either pronouns. So like she her, they them, I'm like, I don't really care. And I have a lot of people in my life that don't really understand the whole pronoun thing. So like when I do get people to use they them, like my best friends do, and everything, like my friends from the voyage will do it, like then I'm just like, yes, these are my pronouns, because like I don't have anyone, like my dog can't use them with me, he's a dog, like, and I'm like not around anyone else other than my best friends, and so like I don't often get to like hear it. So yeah, I figured all of that out in the span of 4 months, give or take. It was like 2019 was a year for me. Like the beginning of 2019 and the end of 2019 were like 2 separate years. And then like I started 2019 off really struggling after traumatic event. And then in the spring and summer after graduation, I was doing better. I was doing really well. And then I just had 1,000 existential crises, as April knows, like, and I just like my entire life flipped upside down because I came out, and naturally my church was like, what? Because
how many coffee talks did you have to go to?
Oh no.
Oh, I don't even know. No, probably technically there was only one coffee talk, but there were a lot of meetings, which I think are worse. I'd rather them be like, let's go get coffee, instead of like, we're gonna have a meeting on this day, and I'm like, do we have to though?
Yeah, meetings sounds scarier,
right?
Like being like we have a meeting. It sounds like a parent teacher like business type of transaction. Like even at least with coffee, you know what you're getting into when someone in church says, let's go get coffee. Like you know what you're getting into deep down, but it has just enough of a sugar coating on it where it's like, okay, like I guess I'll do this.
Right. And at least you get coffee out of it. Like
exactly.
So I had like one like legit coffee date for that, but the rest were all like legit meetings. Brittany and I went out for lunch, and I like came out to her, and I was like, I don't really know what to do with this, and it was like literally like a week after I came out, so like I hadn't even fully realized the extent of my queer identity, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. And she was like, you have to tell your leaders, you serve in like 80 areas, like you have to tell them. You serve with the press, which was our coffee shop, you know, you're involved in kids, you're involved in young adults, like you're super involved in outreach. You practically helped our outreach coordinator like run outreach. Like you need to tell your leaders. And so I think it was that following Sunday, I talked to 2 of my leaders, and like they were not fun conversations. It was just super awkward. I was like, well, here's where I am. And I don't know biblically where I stand on this yet, because it's still a gray area for me. And I feel like my church was like, haha, we can mold you still. They were like, oh, okay. Like, let's give you resources, or like, okay, you know, keep talking to us about it, things like that. And I know when I told my outreach director, and came out to her, it went a little better than Brittany and I's mutual friend, but it was still awkward, and they really thought I was like maybe going on the course of like, I just have same-sex attraction, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And she, you know, she prayed with me after our conversation, and she 100% prayed for my future husband, and I was like, but what if it's not? Like, so yeah. And I mean, I wasn't like planning, like it was at the very beginning, so I was just like, I don't think I'd date a woman, but like looking back, I'm like, okay, that's fine, everything is fine. And so I had meetings, and you know, our family life director, aka the youth pastor, got involved, and he's like super chill, but this is a very awkward conversation. Basically, And every meeting I had, Brittany came up. Like the church was convinced that Brittany turned me gay.
Oh my God.
You caught the gay. You caught the
gay. No, what am I gonna do? Yeah, they were convinced. And Brittany's partner is also from that church. And so they ultimately blamed her partner for Brittany being gay. And then because Brittany and I are so close, they were like, oh, Brittany's the reason Lauren now has this. And I was like, I feel like that's not how it works. Okay.
No.
Like, it helped with things, but like, that's okay. So every conversation I had involved Brittany. And I was like, I thought we were talking about me. Oh my gosh. And then and then Brittany had a few conversations with our church leaders, and her partner was brought up in all of them. And then nobody actually like went and tried to talk to her partner. It was just Brittany and I. And we were like, oh, okay. And I think it was because they thought we were more likely to listen because we were newly out and everything. Especially me, where I was like, I don't think I want to date a girl. And all of this is a gray area. So I really feel like they were just like, oh, because when I, came out and was like, I don't, I'm attracted to women, but I wouldn't like date and marry one. They were kind of like an understanding, like, okay, that's good. And I'm like, okay, thank you. That's fine. So lots of really awkward conversations, meetings. One of them involved my two leaders that I came out to and the family life director. One of them was just my outreach director and the family life director. And then another one involved our lead pastor. And I was like, but why? And our lead pastor is like outside of the homophobia, like he's pretty great. He's fun to be around and all of that. But like when you're like PD, which is what we call him, is like if he's coming around, like things have to be a certain way, like just like a little intimidating because he's very like attentive to detail and everything. And it's almost like in school, like if you get sent to the principal's office, if you have to go have a meeting in his office, like, did you do anything or are you there voluntarily? Like, so he popped on and it was just the family life director and the outreach director with me first. And then the lead pastor popped in and I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't get told this until like the day of, like right before I got there, they're like, oh, by the way. And I was like, this is an anxiety provoking. It's fine. We're fine. Everything is fine. And so he came in. When he came in, it was to, talk about all things LGBTQ plus and the Bible and, what our church believed and everything, and things that as a leader in the church and someone who's just very known in the church and everything, I had to be careful about what I posted on my social media. I remember one day it was, my outreach director was, I'm not trying to censor what you post on social media, but like you need to be aware of it, which I like understand, but then I was like, so can I post about how much I hate Trump, or is that a no because half this church is Republican? Like, I just want to get a feel for what I'm allowed to do.
Well, I feel like that's overstepping such a boundary though, when jobs like will censor your social media. It's like, okay, then just like don't mention me on social media then, and like we'll call it a day. It's that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, and especially as you two know, I use Instagram a lot. And I use that as a platform for multiple things. And so that's really the one thing that's public. My Facebook is just to friends. And friends of friends if people are tagged. But my Instagram isn't private. It's public. So that's really the one where a lot of things can be seen. And you just never know who from church like has an Instagram, has come upon your Instagram, things like that. So because they knew I was so vocal on social media and in real life, they were very much like, maybe just like, basically at first, it was before I came out, they were basically like, take it down a notch with all like the politics, because it was constantly me just like calling out the right wing and being like, you all suck as humans, and posting a bunch of liberal stuff, like I'm pro-choice but also I love Jesus, like things like that. And so then it was, oh hey, you're queer, cool, don't post anything about it. And I was like, well, I haven't figured anything out, so bold of you to assume I would right now. And so the whole reason the lead pastor came into that meeting was because of something I posted. I had shared an article that one of my friends had shared, that was, I don't even remember where it was, but it was a trans woman who wasn't actually a trans woman, who was reading like storybooks to kids at a public library, and then was being, she was like abusing them, and everyone like had all these horrible reactions, and I shared it and was like, this is not what the community is. This person does not represent the entire community. This is not a thing. And I like made a post, and because my pastor and I were friends on Facebook, he saw it and he went to the outreach director and was like, we need to talk to her because what is this? And then she told him, like, he obviously doesn't know every meeting we have, that they have, right? Like, we have a big church that he's the lead pastor of. He's not going to know about every meeting. But then the outreach director was like, oh, well, recently, she's told us she's struggling with this. And then he was like, all right, so a big meeting. That was super awkward. And I was like, I don't agree with any of this. Like, you gave me a lot of things to think about, but I don't think the thought process is going to end where you want it to end. So yeah.
Right. They're like, then, it's always like, oh, you can look into this, you can do your own research, but you have to come to like our conclusions. Like,
yeah. So I had like, I think I had just finished God and the Gay Christian by Matthew Vines. And before this big meeting, and then at said meeting, my family life director was like, I have a book for you, I'll get it to you later. And he like gave it to me all secretively, because heaven forbid I read about queer things. I don't know. And it's called People to Be Loved by Preston Sprinkle. I swear that's his name. I wanted to chuck the book across the room.
What's this book? Except I've never heard of this book, but I can tell from the audible groans it's probably not a good one.
He's like Matthew Vine's book, but like flipped around. Like,
well, okay, so the thing is that like I think he tries to sometimes masquerade himself as side B, except he's straight, so fuck that. Like, he's like, I
don't know. Have you heard his name? Like, his name is Preston Sprinkle. I feel like we might just be repressing something.
And also for people listening, side B is it's I guess affirming, kind of, in the sense that
it can be queer,
but yeah.
It's an idea that queer folks are called to celibacy, and I guess there's this interesting thing where there are some folks who like identify as side B in the fact that they're like a queer person called to celibacy, but they might not necessarily think that all queer people are called to celibacy. There are some who do.
Yeah, because that's how QCF describes it too, where it's like side B as opposed to being like conversion therapy. Side B is like when you willfully choose to be celibate as a queer person and you've been called to that, instead of it being like forced upon you or being coerced into it.
Yeah, so I support queer folks who have those callings, but if you're a straight person who's saying that, fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So People to Be Loved was just a hot mess. There were a lot of inconsistencies, but like with that and God and the Gay Christian, which I mean checks out. And I'm very much the kind of person that when it comes to something like this, I want to get both sides, which is what I was very open about telling my leadership team. I don't know where I stand on this. It's been hard to figure out where to go with this, just because I can't find anything that leans that doesn't lean either way heavily, right? And so apparently the solution was people to be loved. And my pastor was just like, you know, he does it in a really, you know, like loving way, as opposed to it's really full of hate. And the tone of the book is actually like chill, like not throwing accusations or anything, but also it's horrible. Like,
yeah, it's almost worse in a way.
It really is.
Like I'd rather be told I'm a sin and terrible and awful and evil and going to hell than be told like, it's okay, God still loves you, but you just can't be happy. It's like I'd rather just be honest.
Yeah. He does do things like disagree with conversion therapy, but then goes and kind of agrees with more acceptable conversion therapy. I was like, oh, okay, and you lost the brownie points. Like,
so close to getting it.
I was like, you were so close. So yeah, my pastor gave me that to read, and I hated everything. And I was like, all right, well, this helped me solidify some things. And then of course, being the book nerd that I am, I added a bunch of other books to my list to read, which it's been a year and a half and I still haven't read them, but and so quarantine happened and I wasn't at church every week serving, because I can promise you if it was a Sunday I was somewhere serving, and it had been getting really hard for me to pretend everything was fine and to pretend I was still straight and cis at church. I'm very much an authentic person. I try to be as authentic as possible in real life and on social media, having boundaries, of course. And so I really felt like I was just wearing a mask and I wasn't being my true authentic self. And I had gone all of my teen years with doing that because of my depression and everything. So I'm like, I'm finally not doing the thing, and now I know who I really am, and I have to put this mask back on when I go to church just because I'm queer and I want to worship Jesus. And so it was getting really like emotionally exhausting. I was very frustrated by it, but also very nervous to come out. And at the time I was slowly being pushed out of certain serve areas. So when I first came out, the end of 2019, I suddenly wasn't a leader in our Saturday morning outreach because I was going through things. And so that's not good if you're a leader. Like, I had to step down from being a small group leader after having two sessions.
It's such an unhealthy thing, right? That like apparently leaders are supposed to always have their shit together, always like not have any struggles. And it's like, that leads to burnout. That leads to pastors like quitting and just
And their reason for I couldn't lead the young adult ladies small group was, well, what if in your small group one of the girls comes up to you and confides that she's questioning her sexuality? What do you do? And I'm like, I send her to you guys, even though I don't really want to, but technically that's what I would do. Like, I know how to like go about this as a leader. Like I know how to do this. But they were like, and I was like, okay. I also, in my group, I had a lesbian couple and I was like, this is fine. I have to be over here pretending I'm straight when I like could connect with these two girls about being in this church and being queer, and they're like openly gay and in a relationship and everything, and it was like, no, you can't. And I'm like, okay. Thankfully we've still stayed connected, so we're all in the loop about all of the things now, but it was just like, yeah, you can't lead them. I think they were essentially me pulling Brittany, so to speak, and like turning the girls in my group gay. And I was like, okay. So I just got slowly pulled out of different serve areas, and then quarantine happened, and we had literally been quarantined for like 2 weeks. So it had only been 2 weeks of online services. And I was just so done. I wasn't around church people. I wasn't really talking to church people. I was just basically like, fuck it, I'm coming out publicly. And so the very end of March of 2020, I came out publicly on Instagram and on my Facebook. Naturally worried about the backlash. I actually received amazing support, especially on Instagram, where you just like expect the trolls to be. And that's just because I knew that people from church weren't actually going to actively say anything on my social media, like when I first came out. And then I had another meeting, go figure. And this time it was one of my friends who had an internship with the church under outreach, and one of our other pastors. We had like 5 pastors, I swear. Actually, probably more. We're a pretty big church for this area. Like they're pretty big, with like 3 campuses.
And are they all white men, or wouldn't surprise me?
Well, no, they are. All of them. Every single pastor. Our church, mostly white. It gives me feelings. And so one of our other pastors, and my friend was like, hey, let's do a check-in. And I was like, okay. And
it's a trap.
It's a trap, yeah. And she was like, oh, pastor is going to join us. And I was like, okay. But again, I was not told a pastor was coming until last minute. And I was like, good talk. So it was like the weirdest Zoom call of my life. They were like, oh, how have you been doing with quarantine? Blah, blah, blah. You still working? All that jazz. And then it turned into, right, so you came out. And I was like, yes. And they didn't necessarily try to change my mind. But it was ultimately like, well, okay, if you're going to be out and still attend this church, don't tag our church in anything that's gay. And I'm like, why would I even want to do that in the first place? Y'all ain't affirming. Like, no, thank you. So there was that conversation. And that was about that. None of my friends talked to me. None of our friends, Brittany and I, like, they all just slowly stopped talking to us. I slowly got pushed out of outreach, which was actually the most painful thing because I adore outreach with everything in me. I love our Operation Backpack, our back to school outreach, our Christmas outreach, our Saturday morning outreach where we make pancakes for our community and they just get free breakfast and we chat. Like, I just love all of it. I had started helping behind the scenes, doing a lot of administration stuff, had really helped our outreach director run the Operation Backpack the last couple of years. And then this past year, I just slowly got pushed out in 2020, especially after coming out publicly. I wasn't asked to help with anything outreach after the pandemic had started, including our, back to school outreach. I wasn't asked to serve anywhere. I think I was told I could serve in another place until the press opened back up because we weren't obviously going to serve coffee yet. And so I volunteered, and I was like, okay, because it would only be a once a month serve. And there was so many different volunteers from all 3 campuses that it was going to be like every other month. So I volunteered to like be a greeter. And I did that for a month. I did that one weekend. And then by the time my next one was rolling around, I was like, yeah, I'm leaving this church. I'm done. Like, yeah. And so I had to send an email to the pastor, the same one that was in my Zoom check-in, and was just like, I'm leaving the church. I'll do my last serve like I'm supposed to, but then, I'm no longer going to be a part of this church. And, just feel like theology wise, I can't do this. I'm not okay with the way Brittany and I have been treated. And he literally was like, I'm concerned, said something about being concerned how people have treated me since coming out. So like wanted to like have a conversation about that. And we were like, no.
Too damn late.
Yeah, like that's
also, what it is. So we're not going to come talk to you. What? So yeah, so I eventually left. I did like that one last serve. And it was very frustrating because it was still the middle of COVID. Like it was summertime. Yeah. And so you had to wear your mask still and whatever. And they, only certain amount of people in the auditorium and certain spaced and everything. And then once you're sitting down, if you want, you can take your mask off. And I was like,
that scientifically doesn't make any sense.
The church I grew up in, I sort of was following what they were doing during COVID. Not attending there anymore, but I was just curious. And so, they did also reopen in like June 2020. And they were like, oh, in the mask guidelines, you can take off your mask for religious use. And that's probably for communion, right? And that maybe makes sense because it's like you can distance and just sort of quickly pop it in. But like they were like, oh, so because we can take our mask off for religious use, we're going to take them off to sing, to worship. So stupid.
It's so dumb because I think like there's so many people getting up in arms about like the church being closed, infringement upon our like religious rights. First of all, there are real Christians around the world that are actually being persecuted. Like, calm down. And second of all, I feel like during this time, the church was closer to how it had been in the past, in the sense like there wasn't a church building. You just had to have that faith within yourself and with family and with community. And it was like kind of having to get closer to God without the accoutrements of a church building. Too bad that kind of went over a lot of evangelical heads.
Well, they like to quote from like, I think is it from Hebrews or from one of the epistles? It's like, do not give up on meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, or something like that.
Yes, so. I'm almost positive my church used that somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not what that verse means, but okay.
No.
I was like, I'm not a theologian. I had 2 Bible classes my whole time, but like I know that's not right.
Paul was not in the middle of a pandemic when he wrote that.
Also, like what? That was a time I didn't like how they didn't have their masks. It was like you can take it off for worship, and then the volunteers, because we had to keep as much space as possible for attendees. So the volunteers, we all could like chill in the back, sat right next to each other. And I was like, but why? And I was the only one who kept their mask on the entire time. I kept it on for worship. I kept it on for the sermon. Like literally, it was on virtually the entire time I was in that building. And not everyone else did it.
And you have like health conditions, right? And so like that makes sense. And like that's so sucky that other people were like not being like considerate of you. Just
right. And our lead pastor literally had like been walking around the foyer with his mask like under his chin, and I was like, sir,
that's not how you wear that.
This church. Oh my gosh. And they in lieu of a sermon one week, they he and his wife were up on the platform together sharing things that had recently been happening in their life. And as much as I was hurting for his wife with what she was going through, I also wanted to be physically able to throw a chair, because the entire message had to do with illness, and it was extremely ableist, and my disabled self is like, what? They're like, the enemy is trying to attack her. I'm like, did the enemy go in and screw up my genes for my genetic disease? Like, he can't do that. That's not how this works. It was just like horrible. I don't even remember what was said, but I know I was just like, oh, thank you for feeling like I'm not allowed to be disabled when it's not my choice. Okay, great. And then they had people like the staff and elders go up to pray over her. One person had their mask on out of 20 people on that platform.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Our pastor was dead ass like, I know they don't have masks on, but it's okay because they're our family. They're like family. And I'm in the back corner like, Jesus hold me back. Like, I can't. I was like, oh my gosh, and like our pastor was complaining about COVID, and I understand it was hard for his wife to go through these treatments and him not being able to go, but he didn't fully seem to like put together why. Like, he was just extremely mad about all like the guidelines and stuff, and I'm like, your wife is extremely like she could get this so easily right now compared to you. So even if you have a mask on, that you're still doing things like going to the church and working while she's now at home because she literally can't go out.
Yeah. And like you can bring the germs home too. It's just like,
right.
Yeah. That's funny.
That amount of selfishness.
Yeah.
And also wild. Like prove all to push their own theology about like the devil and faith healing, and like that's just so gross.
I literally just like wanted to yeet myself out of the church.
Like, I mean, at least in a sense, it's like you had that final nail in the coffin, and like that like you're not missing out on anything. You're like leaving something that is toxic, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like I was like, oh, maybe I don't know, maybe I'll just stay for a little while. I don't know, what God kind of wants me to do. Maybe stay and feel things out and everything. And then I went to church, once, twice to serve. And then I was like, I hate everything. I'm not coming back. Like, I was like, this gave me so many feelings. I just walked through the door and I didn't feel welcomed anymore. I had people who hadn't talked to me since I come out see me in person and be like, oh my gosh, girl, how you doing? And like, you haven't talked to me once during this pandemic, let alone since I've come out. Like, you're going to be all of a sudden you're excited to see me. And it stopped feeling like home like it used to. And I just slowly got more and more confirmation that it was like, yeah, no, you gotta go. So it was just extremely painful. It was literally my life after graduation. It was literally where all my friends were. All of my activities outside of like working were at the church. I was on track to possibly doing an internship with them. And then I came out, so that got shot down real fast. So yeah, it was a time. Like, I still see pictures from certain things like on my Facebook memories or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, like Serve Day just happened. And that's a thing churches do around the country, one day of the summer where they just go out and serve their community. And I absolutely love it. And I've loved being a part of it and leading Serve Day projects. And I recently saw that it had happened a couple weeks ago, and I just like, my heart hurt. I was just like looking at my phone, like crying a little. I was like, once upon a time I got to do Serve Day, and it was like like I would get so obnoxiously pumped about it. With anything big going on, if you knew me, there was no way you didn't know about it because I'm just obnoxious. So yeah, not doing those things. Like, I still have my outreach shirt. Now it's like tucked away in a box. Cause I like couldn't bring myself. I'm like, I don't want to wear this, but like, I also don't want to get rid of this. I love my outreach shirts. So, and I still have some of my church shirts, but like, it's literally because they're cute. That's the only reason. I'm like, these are cute. It might say the church's name, but I'm gonna wear it anyways because we throw out some cute shirts. So
my summer camp, church summer camp t-shirts are my pajama shirts. So
I love that.
So yeah, it's such a difficult thing too when like you're saving things from different parts of your life, and it's like, yes, you can look back on those things fondly for the time that they were happening, but now it's knowing what you know, it's painful, and it just sucks to be in that middle of the road place with that sort of thing.
And now I look at this church and I see all of the things where I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Like, so it's weird seeing it in a different light. And another thing that really got me to be like, I can't do this anymore was, I know a lot of the people who go up on the worship team, and our worship team changes weekly for the most part, depends. And, I know almost everybody who's up there on any given week. And it just, especially when I was still going in person, it was just really hard to worship and fully worship, knowing that the people on that platform didn't agree with the way I was living my life. Like they thought I was living in sin just for being who I was. So it was just really challenging to really worship with, you know, these songs that mean so much to me, because music is a big part of my life and is obviously a huge way I connect with God. And it just like, it wasn't the same with it being led by people that now looked at me different because I knew I was queer. Even virtual, I was like, this is not as fun as it used to be. And they have a lot of contemporary worship, you know, the lights and the fog machine and all that jazz, a full band. It's like a mini worship concert, which like I'm here for. And then I'm like, that's not sensory friendly. What? So like save that for actual concerts. So it was just, even virtual, I was like, I cannot get into this like I used to. Like this is just sad. And
it's that notion.
Like, no.
Yeah, and it's that notion too of like, why stay in a place where you're not going to be allowed to grow? You're not going to be allowed to find yourself and adapt. It's like, why stay in that place that will just keep you in a box?
Yeah. So Brittany and her partner were like, peace and cut ties before I did, and then I eventually joined it, and they were like, it took you long enough. I was like, guys, I really thought God wanted me to stay there for a hot minute. Give me a break. Turns out that hot minute lasted very quickly.
So yeah, Lauren, I really resonate with, you know, some of you talking about your journey of like, you know, particularly like taking so long to leave, because like for me, you know, I realized, I mean, well, I started deconstruction, I guess, in like fall of 2016, and then like realized I was queer end of 2017. Took me until August 2018 to really like leave. And even at the time, it was like, it felt like one of the most painful decisions I had like ever made. And you know, I mean, it was so weird that like I remember even, I guess, even in 2017, I was like, oh, I'm gonna like stay so I can like make things better. I can be a good ally at the time. You know, and I think like that was actually what was actually happening is like I was trying to like justify why I wanted to cling to something so familiar. Like it was like this was just like all I had. This was where I spent my adolescence, and I didn't necessarily know. Well, I was starting to discover like other options, but it was still like, oh, the contemporary worship and like my friends are here, but like ultimately I guess I just started to realize kind of how shallow it was. Like I mean, I wasn't really I guess by the time I left, I wasn't like out, but it still just felt like I didn't really belong. I was sort of the odd one out. And then in July 2019, I like, for some reason, God was like, you're going to this one event, last event at this church. And, you know, that I'm just calling you to do this. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't know why, but okay. It was this like young adults night of worship. And so I went, and like, you know, the thing that happened was like this contemporary worship that I used to find so much joy in suddenly felt so like not, I like particularly like something about it felt so manufactured. Like when there was a song where like, you know, we were saying like some O's in the middle of the song as you do in contemporary worship. And the lights went to be on the audience, and I could see the person who was like taking marketing shots like of us from like the front of the place, and it just like was like, oh, these are marketing shots. Okay, this is so look nice.
I had a couple of friends that were on like the photography team, serve team. So anytime, every Sunday for service, and then anytime we had an event, there's always people taking pictures so we can have an updated picture to, you know, for like next year's women's event or whatever. And they come out really cute. And I used to have access to them. And I just like casually even if, so the rule was like I had access to them, but I couldn't post them unless the church had already posted them. So I just have a bunch of random like pictures that my friend has taken of me during church things saved. I was like, I'm going to take this one. You haven't used this one yet, but I'm going to take that anyways. Like, so yeah, it's definitely like, there's like, I get like the church wants to like capture these moments, but it's also completely marketed at the same time. They're like, let's capture these moments. It will help with promotion for next year, which is good, you know.
Well, it's part of how they
more people involved, but
they try to look hip and young and like cool. We're casual. You can wear jeans to church, and it's like, but it hides the
lead pastor has preached in ripped jeans before, so there are no rules at my church. Like,
I remember one of my aunts called Saddleback Church Tattoo Church, because everyone at Saddleback had tattoos. Saddleback is really freaking conservative.
Right? It hides the terrible theology that they have. Like, yeah. Yeah, and I just remember at that event that I attended, the night of worship, like there were several people who were like, "Oh, hey, like we haven't seen you in a while." And that sort of veiled comment that's like, "What's going on?" Like, yeah, and then like, you know, people would always, the people were asking me like, "Oh, why haven't you been here?" And I literally just lied because I was like, I don't owe these people my story. I just told them that I've been working a lot on Monday nights, where the young adult group is. So. And it just felt so weird. Like all the conversations felt so like shallow to me. And honestly, the only conversation I had was genuine, was with the person that I would later find out is also queer. So, you know, makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
Checks out.
Yeah, it's also like one thing that really just seems to like resonate with all of these like stories in terms of coming out in church and stuff is I feel like queer people in church are always expected to have to take the high road, whatever that high road is. Like we can't make waves. We can't ask questions. We can't advocate. We can't even like mention that we're queer and help others that may identify the same way. It's like we have to take the high road or the submissive road.
And you can't be a leader. You can greet, you can maybe stack chairs, you know, you can make like
show people where to sit. That's what
you can be kind, but you can't be like vulnerable. You can't be open. It's
right, you know.
And I feel like church is the place where you should be allowed to be those things.
Yeah. And that's how I felt at my church. And then I came out and I was like, oh, I just walked into a whole different church. Like, instead of feeling like I'm home and I'm comfortable and I'm ready to see all my friends, it was like, this is very awkward. Who's going to come up to me? Is anyone going to mention the thing about me coming out? They're gonna have questions? Dear Lord, I hope not. Like,
and then it's weird when you have conversations with people who know that you've come out and stuff, and then it's just I understand that feeling of like it just seems really fake. It seems contrived, where it's like you know that things are going on, but you're not going to ask about those things. You don't want to know. You want to live in bliss.
My God, at that final event that I attended, it was like my queerness was the elephant in the room that no one was going to mention, because I was out at that point on social media. And for me, it was a similar situation of like a nail in the coffin. Like, I'm not missing anything by leaving this church. I have my community completely outside of it. So
just like that friend, one of the last few times I served, that came up, and a couple of my friends are like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever because of COVID, blah blah blah, are you okay with hugging? Like, how have you been? But it wasn't like it was like the me coming out was clearly like this weight in our conversation. Even the pastors that I've had conversations with that didn't acknowledge it. I was like, oh, Lauren, hi, how have you been? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we're not going to talk about the queer thing? Okay, we're not going to talk about the queer thing. Like, I aggressively dressed gay today just to see what would happen, and you're all still ignoring it. So we're doing really swell.
So one thing we always try to do with our guests is, where are you on social media? Where can people find you? Do you have any cool things coming up that people can support, or any charities that you would want people to support? We're always curious to know.
You can find me on Instagram for sure. And at Lauren's Gay Life. I'm also on TikTok, but honestly, I use my dogs more than my own at this point. I just haven't made content in a hot minute or posted anything. But I am on TikTok under the same username, Lauren's Gay Life. Those are really the main two that I use. That's it. That's where I am. I share random things. Sometimes my dog. He also has his own Instagram, so I mean, I mostly share him over there, but.
Perfect. Are we allowed to tag your dog's Instagram as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Proud dog.
Of course, he would.
Yes.
Yes, he would absolutely love it. He has no idea that it exists, but I'm just going to say he would love it anyways. It's all going to go to his little head and be like, Milo, look, you're so famous. And he's going to be like, yes, I'm fabulous. I know. It's fine. So yes, he is at milo.the.rescue. So yep. Milo the rescue. He's my little rescue pup from South Texas. Yeah.
Such a cutie pie.
He's adorable. Pain in my butt, but also adorable. So, and he's been doing really well this entire time. I'm very impressed.
Well, Lauren, it was so wonderful to have you and have this conversation. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was exciting and it was fun.
We're working on an outro song. This is just the placeholder. Yeah.
We really hope you enjoyed that episode. You know, we had a lot of fun talking with Lauren. And so now we're going into sort of how we end our episodes, which is by sharing some highs of the week. So Anna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a high this week that was, it's very innocent and it's very sweet, but after a year and a half, I got to hold a baby for the first time and it made me so happy. So it was the last class of my teaching series that we do for my other job. And the mom handed me her kiddo and he's like, not even a year old, I want to say. And she was like, oh, let's take a picture. And I thought, oh, maybe it'll be a selfie with all of us. And she just handed me her baby. And I was just bouncing this cute little boy and he was super smiley and happy. And it just made me really happy because I haven't held a baby in a while. Like it's that weird, I guess like weird maternal instinct. I was like, oh, I've missed this so much. But it was just, it was really sweet. And it actually helped carry me through like the rest of that day because it was such a hectic day.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
I guess for me, getting to go to church this week was nice. It was so I for listeners, I have moved back to Virginia because I need to save money for grad school, so I am living with my family right now. Mm-hmm. So I got to attend the progressive UMC in my town that my family has been attending since leaving the shitty one I grew up in. So I was a little bit worried about whether the new pastor at the church was going to be progressive or not, because, in the UMC as a denomination is not like fully affirming. But I figured, with the church that has already been historically as progressive as Crossroads, they'd assigned a progressive pastor to it. And so I wore one of my queerly beloved t-shirts, the one that says love the sin or hate the sin, and then everything's crossed out but love, that one. And so I wore that shirt, and the first thing that the pastor said to me was, I love your shirt. And so I was like, okay, good, we're good. The new pastor has passed the test.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited to be a part of that church again in person, and to be able to connect with folks there. So
that's fantastic. Sounds like it was a wonderful Sunday. And will you be able to go back next week too? Or at least
I'll be able to attend. We're recording this right now on a Saturday, and so tomorrow I'm going to be able to attend. There's going to be an ice cream social, church ice cream social.
So fun. That's awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Just a couple of plugs. Please, one, feel free to listen wherever podcasts are available: Spotify, Google Store, all of the other ones. Likewise, we're also on Apple Podcasts. And if you would be able to leave a review, that really does help us bump us up in the algorithm. So we'd super duper appreciate it. And likewise, we are on Patreon now, where you can find exclusive episodes, bonus content. You can join our Discord for even our lowest tier, because we love to be able to connect with all of you on a more personal level. Also, we have garden parties at our highest tier, where you will be able to hang out with us once a month on Zoom. We drink, we have fun. It's a great time. So all the links to that will be in the bios of our pages. So please be sure to check those out.
As y'all kind of know, if you've been listening to other episodes, we've been trying to figure out how to like have a cutesy tagline to end these episodes, and right now we just like don't have any ideas. So
yeah, the only one I can think of is like, thanks for eating from the tree of knowledge, but I feel like that's maybe not the best way to end a podcast.
Yeah, I just feel like all the ones we listen to have like such cool lines, like, you know, Dirty Rotten Church Kids has "It's All Gonna Be Okay." Couch Communion has "Stay tuned and stay communed." So yeah, we just want to figure out something like catchy to end on that feels like a little less like awkward and abrupt than like just "thanks for watching" or "bye."
Yeah. So I guess what we're trying to say is, if you have any ideas for a tagline that we can have, preferably nature and theme due to the title, please let us know. We will absolutely give you credit for it, because we believe in crediting our artists here at Reclaiming the Garden.
Yes. Yeah, so for now, I guess, thanks, bye.